I watched from my living room window as the HOA president, Brenda Calloway, marched across my front lawn like she owned the place, her perfectly styled blonde hair bouncing with each aggressive step toward my garage. Behind her trailed two other board members I recognized from the monthly meetings I usually avoided, and they were heading straight for my detached garage where I kept my fishing boat. My name is James Yardley, and I had lived in the Sunset Pines community in Clearwater, Florida, for about 3 years now. The neighborhood was nice enough, with its palm tree-lined streets and maintained common areas, but the HOA was relentless. Every month brought some new complaint or violation notice taped to my door. My grass was half an inch too tall. My mailbox needed repainting. My trash cans were visible from the street on a non-collection day. The list went on, each infraction coming with a fine that seemed to grow exponentially with each offense. But this was different. Brenda and her posse were not carrying clipboards or cameras like they usually did during their violation patrols. They were walking with purpose toward my property, and something about it made my stomach turn. I set down my coffee mug and headed outside, the Florida heat hitting me like a wall even though it was only 9 in the morning. "Can I help you with something?" I called out as I approached them. My garage door was closed, but Brenda was standing right in front of it with her arms crossed, looking at me like I had committed some heinous crime. "Mr. Yardley," she said, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness that always preceded something terrible. "We need to discuss your boat motor." "My boat motor," I repeated, genuinely confused. My 17-foot center console fishing boat sat on its trailer in my garage, same as it had for the past year. "What about it?" According to Section 12, Paragraph 4 of the HOA bylaws, any motorized watercraft stored on the property must be registered with the association and approved by the Architectural Review Committee, Brenda announced, pulling out a folder from under her arm. "You never registered your boat motor, and therefore it is in violation of community standards." I stared at her for a long moment, trying to process what she was saying. "The boat is in my garage, behind a closed door. Nobody can even see it." "That is irrelevant," she snapped, the fake sweetness evaporating instantly. "The rules are the rules, Mr. Yardley. And because you have accumulated over 15 violations in the past 18 months, the board has voted to confiscate the motor as collateral until your outstanding fines are paid in full." "You voted to what?" I felt my face getting hot, and not from the sun. "You cannot just take my property." "Actually, according to Section 27 of the CC and Articus, you signed when you purchased your home. The HOA board has the authority to seize items that are in direct violation of community standards," Brenda said, looking entirely too pleased with herself. The two board members behind her, a middle-aged man named Carl and a woman named Patricia, nodded in agreement like bobbleheads. "That is insane," I said flatly. "You are not taking my boat motor. It is worth $3,000 and I just had it serviced last month." "Then I suggest you pay your fines," Brenda replied. "You currently owe $2,400 in accumulated violations. Once that amount is paid, you can submit a formal request to have your property returned, pending approval from the Architectural Committee." "This is theft," I said, my voice rising. "You cannot just walk onto my property and take my stuff." "It is not theft when it is outlined in the governing documents you agreed to," Brenda countered. She turned to Carl and Patricia. "The board has made its decision. Mr. Yardley, please open your garage so we can remove the motor." "Absolutely not," I said, stepping between them and the garage door. "You are not touching my boat." Brenda's expression hardened. "Mr. Yardley, if you do not comply, We will be forced to add additional fines for obstruction of HOA duties. That is another $500 violation." "I do not care," I shot back. "You are not taking my motor. If you want to fine me, but you are not stepping foot in my garage." For a moment, we stood there in a tense standoff, Brenda glaring at me while I blocked the garage entrance. Finally, she took a step back and pulled out her phone. "Very well," she said coldly. "We will see what the authorities have to say about this." "Go ahead and call them," I said. "I would love to hear a cop tell you that you can't just steal people's property because of HOA rules." Brenda did not call the police, as it turned out. Instead, she and her followers retreated to their cars and drove off, but not before Brenda shouted that I would be receiving another violation notice in the mail. I watched them leave, my heart still pounding with anger and adrenaline. This was getting out of hand. Back inside my house, I immediately called my buddy Marcus, who worked as a real estate attorney in Tampa. I explained the whole situation, and he listened quietly until I finished. "They cannot do that," Marcus said firmly. "I do not care what their bylaws say. They cannot seize your personal property as collateral for unpaid fines. That is not how any of this works." "That is what I thought," I said, relief washing over me. "So what do I do?" "First, do not pay those fines," Marcus advised. "Most of them are probably bogus anyway. HOAs love to pile on violations for nonsense. Second, send the board a formal letter stating that any attempt to enter your property or seize your belongings will be considered trespassing and theft. I can draft something for you if you want." "Please," I said. "This woman is insane." "They usually are," Marcus said with a laugh. "Let me put something together and I will email it to you by tomorrow. In the meantime, make sure your garage is locked and maybe set up a camera or two if you have them." I thanked Marcus and hung up, feeling a bit better about the situation. I did have an old security camera system that I had bought but never installed, so I spent the rest of the afternoon setting up 2 cameras, one pointed at my garage and one at my front door. If Brenda tried anything, I would have evidence. The next few days were quiet. I received Marcus's letter via email, printed it out, and sent it certified mail to the HOA office address. The letter was professional but firm, stating that I disputed the violations and that any attempt to enter my property or seize my belongings would result in legal action. I felt pretty confident that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 4 days after I sent the letter, I came home from work around 6 in the evening to find my garage door standing wide open. My blood ran cold. I parked my truck in the driveway and rushed into the garage, immediately noticing that my boat was still there, but something was wrong. The motor cover was off, and several bolts that secured the outboard motor to the transom were missing. Someone had been working on removing it. I pulled out my phone and checked the security camera footage. What I saw made my blood boil. At approximately 2 in the afternoon, Brenda Calloway's white Mercedes SUV had pulled into my driveway. She got out, looked around nervously, and then tried the garage door. It was locked. She disappeared from the frame for a few minutes, and then the garage door started opening. She must have used the side entrance, which I always forgot to lock because I rarely used it. The footage showed Brenda entering my garage with a toolbox. For the next 40 minutes, she worked on removing my boat motor, but apparently, she did not know what she was doing because she only managed to get a few bolts off before giving up. She took the bolts with her, probably to make it harder for me to use the boat, and then left, closing the garage door behind her. I had her. I had clear video evidence of Brenda Calloway entering my property without permission and attempting to steal my boat motor. My hands were shaking as I saved the footage to 3 different locations: my phone, my computer, and a cloud backup. Then I called the police. The Clearwater Police Department sent an officer to my house within 30 minutes. Officer Davis was a stocky guy in his 40s with a no-nonsense demeanor. I showed him the garage, explained the situation with the HOA, and then showed him the video footage. He watched it twice, taking notes. "That is pretty clear-cut burglary," Officer Davis said. "She entered your property without permission with the intent to commit theft. Do you want to press charges?" "Absolutely," I said without hesitation. "This woman has been harassing me for months, and now she is breaking into my garage and trying to steal my stuff. Yes, I want to press charges." Officer Davis nodded and made a call on his radio. "We will need you to come down to the station to file a formal report and provide a copy of that video footage. Can you do that tonight?" "I can do it right now," I said. I followed Officer Davis to the police station, where I spent the next 2 hours giving a detailed statement and providing all the evidence I had. The video footage, the threatening letters from the HOA, and the letter Marcus had drafted. The detective who took my statement, Detective Rodriguez, seemed almost amused by the whole thing. "HOA president, huh?" she said, shaking her head. "We get calls about HOA disputes all the time, but this is the first one where someone actually broke in and tried to steal something. Most of them just argue about paint colors." "She is relentless," I said. "I honestly think she believes she is above the law because she is the HOA president." "Well, she is about to find out she is not," Detective Rodriguez said. "We have everything we need. We will be issuing a warrant for her arrest." I left the police station feeling vindicated but also anxious. This was escalating quickly, and I had no idea how Brenda would react. I went home, locked all my doors and windows, and tried to get some sleep. The next morning, I was woken up at 7:30 by the sound of someone pounding on my front door. I stumbled out of bed, still half asleep, and checked the security camera feed on my phone. It was Brenda Calloway, and she looked furious. I could see her mouth moving as she yelled something I could not hear through the door. I was not about to open the door for her, so I called the police again. While I waited, Brenda continued pounding and yelling, occasionally peering through my front windows. The whole thing was unnerving. When Officer Davis showed up again, this time with a partner, Brenda immediately switched gears. "Officers, thank goodness you are here," she said, her voice suddenly sweet and concerned. "Mr. Yardley has been harassing me and making false accusations against the HOA board. I came here to try to resolve this peacefully, and he will not even answer the door." Officer Davis looked at me, then back at Brenda. "Madam, are you Brenda Calloway?" "Yes, I am," she said, looking confused. "I am the president of the Sunset Pines HOA." "Brenda Calloway, you are under arrest for burglary," Officer Davis said, pulling out his handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." The color drained from Brenda's face. "What? This is ridiculous. You cannot arrest me." "I am the HOA president. Madam, we have video evidence of you entering Mr. Yardley's property without permission and attempting to steal his boat motor," Officer Davis said calmly as he cuffed her. "You are being charged with burglary in the 3rd degree." Brenda started screaming about lawsuits and wrongful arrest as the officers led her to their patrol car. I stood in my doorway, watching the whole thing unfold. Part of me felt bad, but a larger part of me felt relieved. Maybe this would finally be over. News of Brenda's arrest spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. By that afternoon, I had 3 different neighbors knock on my door asking what happened. I gave them the short version, and most of them seemed shocked but not entirely surprised. Apparently, I was not the only one who had issues with Brenda's overzealous enforcement of HOA rules. One neighbor, an older woman named Deanne who lived 2 houses down, told me that Brenda had once threatened to foreclose on her house because her azalea bushes were the wrong shade of pink, according to the approved plant list. Another neighbor, a guy named Tom, said Brenda had tried to fine him for parking his work truck in his own driveway overnight because it was considered a commercial vehicle. She has been a nightmare since she became president 2 years ago, Tom said. Before that, the HOA was pretty reasonable. But Brenda has this weird power trip thing going on. I am honestly glad someone finally stood up to her. That made me feel a bit better about the whole situation. I was not just some vindictive homeowner trying to get revenge. Brenda had been abusing her position, and she finally got caught. The legal process moved surprisingly quickly. Brenda was arraigned 2 days after her arrest and released on bail. The local news picked up the story because, apparently, a HOA president getting arrested for trying to steal a boat motor was newsworthy. The headline read, "Local HOA president arrested for burglary over boat motor dispute." The article included Brenda's mugshot, which showed her looking angry and disheveled, a far cry from her usually pristine appearance. The story mentioned that Brenda worked as an administrative supervisor for the Department of Veterans Affairs at the Bay Pines VA healthcare system, which surprised me. I had no idea she had a government job. The article also noted that she was facing charges of burglary in the 3rd degree, which carried a potential sentence of up to 5 years in prison. A week after the arrest, I received a call from the state attorney's office. The prosecutor, a woman named Jennifer Morrison, wanted to discuss the case with me. "Mr. Yardley, I have reviewed all the evidence and we have a very strong case," she said. "The video footage is excellent, and Miss Calloway's actions clearly meet the definition of burglary under Florida law. However, she has already indicated through her attorney that she wants to fight this. She claims she had authority to enter your property under the HOA bylaws. Can she actually use that as a defense?" I asked, worried. "She can try," Jennifer said, "but it is not going to work. HOA bylaws do not supersede criminal law. She entered your property without permission with the intent to commit theft. That is burglary, plain and simple. Her attorney knows this is a losing battle, but she is insisting on taking it to trial." "So what happens now?" I asked. "We prepare for trial," Jennifer said. "It will probably be a few months before we get a court date. In the meantime, I need you to keep all your evidence organized and be prepared to testify. We will also be calling the officer who responded to your initial call." I agreed and spent the next few weeks trying to get back to some semblance of normal life. The HOA was in chaos. After Brenda's arrest, several board members resigned, and the remaining members called an emergency meeting to elect a new president. A retired accountant named Gerald took over, and his first act was to announce a full review of all recent violations and fines. Gerald called me personally to apologize for what happened. "Mr. Yardley, the board and I have reviewed your case, and we are dismissing all outstanding violations and fines," he said. "What Brenda did was completely out of line, and it does not represent the values of this community. We are also revising the bylaws to prevent this kind of abuse from happening again." "I appreciate that," I said, genuinely grateful. "I never wanted to be at war with the HOA. I just wanted to be left alone." "Understandable," Gerald said. And for what it is worth, several other homeowners have come forward with complaints about Brenda's conduct. We are looking into all of them. Things were finally starting to calm down, but then I received another piece of news that made the whole situation even more interesting. Marcus called me one afternoon with an update. "I just heard through the grapevine that Brenda lost her job," he said. "Really?" I asked, surprised. "Because of the arrest?" "Yep," Marcus confirmed. Apparently, the VA has a zero-tolerance policy for employees charged with crimes involving dishonesty or breach of trust. Burglary definitely falls into that category. She was placed on administrative leave right after the arrest, and they just officially terminated her employment yesterday. I did not know how to feel about that. On one hand, Brenda had brought this on herself. On the other hand, losing your job over something like this was a huge consequence. But then, I remembered the video of her breaking into my garage and the sympathy faded. She had made her choices. The trial was scheduled for late September, about 4 months after the arrest. I took the day off work and arrived at the Pinellas County Courthouse, feeling nervous but prepared. Jennifer Morrison met me outside the courtroom and walked me through what to expect. "This should be straightforward," she said. "We are going to present the video evidence, your testimony, and Officer Davis's testimony. Brenda's attorney is going to try to argue that she believed she had authority under the HOA bylaws, but that is not a valid defense. The jury should see this for what it is, a clear case of burglary." "What if they do not?" I asked. "Then we appeal," Jennifer said simply. "But I do not think it will come to that. The evidence is too strong." The courtroom was smaller than I expected, and there were only a handful of people in the gallery. Brenda sat at the defense table with her attorney, a sharp-looking man in an expensive suit. She would not look at me. The trial lasted 2 days. The prosecution presented the video footage, which was played on a large screen for the jury to see. Watching it again in the courtroom, with 12 strangers scrutinizing every detail, made the whole thing feel even more surreal. You could clearly see Brenda entering my garage, looking around, and then working on my boat motor with tools she had brought. When I took the stand, Jennifer asked me to walk through the timeline of events, the HOA disputes, the threatening letter about confiscating my motor, and the discovery that someone had broken into my garage. I kept my answers clear and factual, trying not to let my emotions show. Brenda's attorney cross-examined me, trying to paint me as a difficult homeowner who refused to follow the rules. "Mr. Yardley, is it true that you had accumulated 15 violations before this incident?" "I received 15 notices," I corrected. "Most of them were for things like my grass being slightly too long or my trash cans being visible. I disputed many of them because they were unreasonable." "But you did not pay the fines," he pressed. "I did not pay them because I did not believe they were valid," I said. "And my attorney advised me that the HOA was overstepping its authority." "So you just decided the rules did not apply to you," he said. "No," I said firmly. "I decided that I was not going to be bullied into paying thousands of dollars for made-up violations. That does not give anyone the right to break into my garage and try to steal my property." The attorney did not have much of a response to that. Officer Davis testified next, confirming that he had responded to my call and observed the video evidence. He stated clearly that in his professional opinion, Brenda's actions constituted burglary. The defense's case was weak. Brenda took the stand and tried to argue that she believed she had authority to enter my property under the HOA bylaws. She claimed she was just trying to enforce the rules and protect property values in the neighborhood. "Miss Calloway, did you have Mr. Yardley's permission to enter his garage?" Jennifer asked during cross-examination. "I did not need his permission," Brenda said defensively. "The bylaws give the board authority to inspect properties for violations." "But you were not inspecting," Jennifer said. "You were removing bolts from his boat motor. That is not an inspection. That is theft." I was securing the motor so it could be held as collateral, Brenda insisted. By taking it apart, Jennifer said, her tone incredulous. Miss Calloway, you entered Mr. Yardley's property without his knowledge or consent, with tools you brought specifically to disassemble and remove his boat motor. That is not securing collateral. That is theft. And under Florida law, entering someone's property without permission with the intent to commit theft is burglary. Brenda did not have a good answer for that. Her attorney tried to salvage the situation by arguing that her intent was not criminal, but the jury did not buy it. After deliberating for less than 3 hours, they returned a guilty verdict on the charge of burglary in the 3rd degree. Brenda's face crumpled when the verdict was read. Her attorney put a hand on her shoulder, but she just stared straight ahead, tears streaming down her face. I felt a strange mix of relief and pity. She had brought this on herself, but it was still hard to watch someone's life fall apart. Sentencing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. In the meantime, I tried to move on with my life. The new HOA board had been true to their word and dismissed all my fines. They even sent me a formal apology letter, which I appreciated. The neighborhood felt different now, less tense. People were friendlier, and there was a sense that maybe things would get better. When sentencing day arrived, I was not sure if I should attend. Jennifer called me and said it was optional, but she thought it might be good for me to be there. Victims often find closure in seeing the process through to the end, she said, so I went. The courtroom was even emptier this time. Brenda sat at the defense table looking small and defeated. Her attorney argued for leniency, pointing out that she had no prior criminal record and had already suffered significant consequences by losing her job. He asked the judge to consider probation instead of prison time. Jennifer argued that while Brenda might not have a criminal record, her actions were calculated and deliberate. She did not just make a mistake, Your Honor. She planned this. She brought tools. She waited until Mr. Yardley was at work. She knew what she was doing was wrong, and she did it anyway. This was an abuse of power, and it deserves a meaningful consequence. The judge, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, listened to both sides and then addressed Brenda directly. Miss Calloway, you held a position of trust in your community and in your employment. You abused that trust by taking the law into your own hands. You seem to believe that your position as HOA president gave you authority that superseded the law. It did not. Your actions were criminal, and they warrant punishment. She sentenced Brenda to 18 months in prison, followed by 2 years of probation. Brenda would also have to pay restitution for my legal fees and the cost of repairing the damage to my boat motor. It was a harsher sentence than I expected, but the judge seemed to view Brenda's abuse of authority as an aggravating factor. As the bailiff led Brenda away, she finally looked at me. There was no anger in her eyes, just resignation. I did not feel victorious. I just felt tired. Outside the courthouse, Jennifer shook my hand. That is it, she said. It is over. You can move on now. Thank you, I said, for everything. You did the right thing, she said. A lot of people would have just let it go, but you stood up for yourself. That matters. I drove home feeling like a weight had been lifted. The whole ordeal had taken nearly 6 months from start to finish, but it was finally done. Brenda was going to prison. She had lost her government job, and I could finally live in my house without constantly looking over my shoulder. Over the next few weeks, I received several calls and messages from neighbors thanking me. Apparently, Brenda's conviction had given others the courage to come forward with their own complaints about how the HOA had been run. Gerald and the new board were working hard to rebuild trust and create a more reasonable set of rules. One evening, Tom from down the street knocked on my door with a 6-pack of beer. I wanted to say thanks, he said. Brenda tried to fine me $500 last year because my house numbers were supposedly the wrong font. I paid it because I did not know what else to do. But after what happened with you, I filed a complaint with the board and they refunded it. So, thanks for standing up to her. We sat on my porch and drank beer, talking about fishing and football and normal stuff that did not involve HOA drama. It felt good. A few months later, I ran into Deanne at the grocery store. She told me that the HOA had formally apologized to over 20 homeowners for excessive fines and violations under Brenda's leadership. They had refunded thousands of dollars and were working on rewriting the bylaws to include more checks and balances. "You really started something," Deanne said. "I think the neighborhood is better for it." "I just wanted to keep my boat motor," I said with a laugh. "Well, you did more than that," she said. "You reminded everyone that just because someone has a little bit of power does not mean they can do whatever they want." I thought about that conversation a lot in the following weeks. The whole situation had started because Brenda thought she was untouchable. She thought that being HOA president gave her the right to do whatever she wanted, including breaking into my garage and trying to steal my property. But the law did not care about HOA bylaws or her position. She committed a crime, and she paid the price. The irony was not lost on me that Brenda lost her government job over this. She had spent years working for the VA, probably doing good work helping veterans, and she threw it all away because she could not handle a homeowner who pushed back against her petty fines. It was a waste, really. If she had just left me alone, or if she had approached the situation reasonably, none of this would have happened. But that was not who Brenda was. She was someone who needed control, who saw any challenge to her authority as a personal attack. And in the end, that need for control destroyed her life. As for me, I finally got around to fixing my boat motor. I ordered the replacement bolts online, reinstalled everything, and took the boat out for a day of fishing in Tampa Bay. The weather was perfect, the fish were biting, and for the first time in months, I felt completely relaxed. Sitting out there on the water, with nothing but the sound of waves and seagulls, I realized how much energy I had wasted over the past year dealing with HOA nonsense. Life was too short for that kind of stress. I made a promise to myself that I would not let petty disputes take over my life again. When I got back to the marina that afternoon, I ran into an old buddy from high school named Kevin. We had not seen each other in years, and we spent an hour catching up. When he asked where I was living now, I told him about Sunset Pines. "Oh man, I almost bought a house there," Kevin said. "But then I read the HOA rules and decided it was not worth it. Too many restrictions." "It has gotten better recently," I said, and then I told him the whole story about Brenda. He listened with wide eyes, occasionally interrupting with disbelief. "She actually broke into your garage," he said. "That is insane." "Yeah, it was pretty wild," I admitted, "but it is over now. New board, new rules, and hopefully no more drama." "Still," Kevin said, shaking his head, "I think I will stick with my place out in the county, no HOA to deal with." I could not blame him. If I had known what I was getting into when I bought my house, I might have made a different choice. But it was my home now, and I had fought for it. That counted for something. Over the following year, life in Sunset Pines gradually returned to normal. Gerald turned out to be a reasonable and fair HOA president. He focused on maintaining the common areas and enforcing only the rules that actually mattered, like keeping up with lawn maintenance and not parking broken-down cars on the street. The harassment over minor infractions stopped completely. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that Brenda served her full 18-month sentence and was released on probation. She moved out of state shortly after, presumably to start over somewhere where people did not know her story. I did not feel good or bad about it. It was just how things turned out. The whole experience taught me a lot about standing up for myself. For years, I had been the kind of person who avoided conflict and just tried to keep my head down. But when Brenda pushed too far, I realized that sometimes you have to fight back. Not because you want to ruin someone's life, but because you have to protect what is yours. I also learned that positions of authority, even small ones like being an HOA president, can corrupt people. Brenda probably started out with good intentions, wanting to maintain property values and keep the neighborhood nice. But somewhere along the way, she started to believe that the rules gave her power over people, and she abused that power. It was a cautionary tale about what happens when you let a little bit of authority go to your head. One afternoon, about a year and a half after the trial, I was working in my garage when Gerald stopped by. He was doing a neighborhood check-in, something he did every few months just to stay connected with residents. "How are things going, James?" he asked. "Good," I said honestly. "No complaints." "Glad to hear it," Gerald said. "You know, I wanted to thank you again for what you did. I know it was not easy, but you really helped turn this community around." "I just wanted to keep my boat motor," I said, repeating what had become my standard response. Gerald laughed. "Well, however it happened, we are better off now. The board is actually talking about putting together a neighborhood barbecue next month, kind of a fresh start thing. I hope you will come." "I will be there," I said. The barbecue turned out to be a great event. Almost the entire neighborhood showed up, and for the first time since I moved in, it actually felt like a community. People were laughing, kids were playing, and there was no tension in the air. Tom brought his famous smoked ribs, Diane made potato salad, and I contributed a cooler full of drinks. At one point during the evening, a newer resident named Rachel approached me. She had moved in about 6 months earlier and did not know the full story. "I keep hearing people mention something about a boat motor," she said. "What is that all about?" Several nearby neighbors laughed and Tom jumped in. "Oh, you have got to hear this story," he said, so we told her the whole thing. Brenda's reign of terror, the attempted theft, the arrest, the trial, and the conviction. Rachel listened with increasing amazement. "That actually happened," she said. "That is like something out of a movie." "It was definitely surreal," I admitted, "but it is over now and things are much better. I will say this is the friendliest HOA community I have ever lived in," Rachel said. "Everyone has been so welcoming." "That is because we learned our lesson," Gerald said, raising his beer. "To reasonable rules and reasonable people." We all raised our drinks and toasted to that. As the sun set and the party wound down, I stood in my driveway looking at my house. It was not perfect. The paint could use a touch-up and the landscaping was nothing special. But it was mine and I had fought to protect it. That made it worth something. The boat motor incident, as it came to be known in the neighborhood, became a bit of a legend. New residents would hear the story and shake their heads in disbelief. It became a reminder of what the community used to be like and how far it had come. For me, it was a chapter of my life that I was happy to close. I had stood up to a bully, protected my property, and helped create positive change in my community. That was enough. I still take my boat out regularly, cruising around Tampa Bay and fishing off the coast. Every time I start that motor, I think about how close I came to losing it. But I also think about how much stronger I am for having fought back. Looking back, I do not regret anything I did. Pressing charges against Brenda was the right call. She broke the law, and she needed to face consequences. The fact that she lost her government job was unfortunate, but it was a direct result of her own actions. She chose to break into my garage. She chose to try to steal my property. and she chose to abuse her position of authority. Those choices cost her everything: her reputation, her job, her freedom, and her place in the community. It was a harsh lesson, but sometimes people need to learn the hard way that actions have consequences. As for the HOA, it became a model for how a homeowners association should operate. Gerald and the board focused on the things that actually mattered: maintaining common areas, organizing community events, and enforcing reasonable rules that kept the neighborhood looking nice without being oppressive. It was not perfect, but it was fair. I eventually got more involved in the HOA myself, attending meetings and serving on the Architectural Review Committee. I figured if I was going to live in an HOA community, I might as well help make sure it stayed reasonable. Plus, after everything that happened, I felt like I had a responsibility to make sure no future board member went down the same path Brenda did. The committee was actually pretty easy. We reviewed requests for things like fence installations, exterior paint colors, and landscaping changes. Our standard was simple: as long as it looked decent and was not going to negatively impact neighbors, we approved it. No arbitrary rules, no power trips, just common sense. One day, about 2 years after the whole ordeal, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Brenda. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a handwritten note on plain paper. "Dear James," it read, "I know you probably do not want to hear from me, and I understand if you throw this letter away without reading it. But I wanted to say that I am sorry. What I did was wrong, and I have spent the past 2 years thinking about why I did it. I think I got so caught up in being the HOA president that I forgot I was supposed to be serving the community, not controlling it. You standing up to me was the wake-up call I needed, even though it cost me everything. I am in a better place now, mentally and emotionally. I have a new job and I am working on being a better person. I do not expect your forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I understand what I did was wrong and I am truly sorry. Brenda." I read the letter twice, trying to figure out how I felt about it. Part of me was skeptical. Was this genuine remorse, or was she just trying to make herself feel better? But another part of me appreciated that she had taken the time to acknowledge what she did and apologize. I did not write back. I did not think there was anything left to say. But I kept the letter in a drawer, a reminder that people can change, even if it takes losing everything to get there. Life continued. The neighborhood thrived. I kept fishing, working, and living my life without the constant stress of HOA harassment. It was not dramatic or exciting, but it was peaceful, and after everything I had been through, peace was exactly what I needed. Every now and then, someone would ask me about the boat motor incident, and I would tell the story. It never got old watching people's reactions when I got to the part about Brenda getting arrested. But the story was not really about revenge or getting even. It was about standing up for yourself when someone tries to take advantage of you. I learned that you do not have to be confrontational or aggressive to protect what is yours. You just have to be willing to stand your ground and let the law do its job. Brenda thought she was above the law because she had a title and some perceived authority. But the law does not care about HOA bylaws or who you think you are. It applies to everyone equally. That was the real lesson in all of this. No one is above the law, not HOA presidents, not government employees, not anyone. And when someone breaks the law, they have to face the consequences, no matter who they are or what position they hold. As I write this, sitting on my porch on a warm Florida evening, I can see my boat in the garage through the open door. The motor is running perfectly, and I've got a fishing trip planned for this weekend. Life is good. The HOA is reasonable. My neighbors are friendly. and I can finally enjoy my home without constantly looking over my shoulder. The whole experience with Brenda changed me in ways I did not expect. I am more confident now, more willing to stand up for myself when something is not right. I am also more aware of how power can corrupt people, even in small ways. Being an HOA president is not exactly a high-level position, but it was enough power for Brenda to lose herself in it. I hope she has found peace wherever she is now. I hope she learned from her mistakes and is living a better life. But mostly, I am just glad that chapter of my life is over. The boat motor sits in my garage, a reminder of everything that happened. But it is also more than that. It is a symbol of why I fought back. It was not just about a piece of equipment worth $3,000. It was about principle. It was about not letting someone bully me into submission. It was about standing up for what was right, even when it would have been easier to just give in. And in the end, standing up for myself was worth it. Brenda went to prison, lost her job, and had to start her life over. I got to keep my boat motor and help transform my HOA into something positive. Justice was served, and my community was better for it. I often think about what would have happened if I had not installed those security cameras. Without video evidence, it would have been my word against Brenda's, and who knows how that would have turned out. The cameras were a last-minute decision, something I almost did not bother with. But they ended up being the difference between justice and letting Brenda get away with it. That is another lesson I took from this. Protect yourself. Document everything. You never know when you might need evidence to prove your case. If I had not had that video footage, Brenda might still be HOA president, still harassing homeowners, and still abusing her position. The neighborhood is different now in all the best ways. The new board actually listens to residents. They hold regular meetings where people can voice concerns. They enforce rules fairly and reasonably. And most importantly, they remember what happened when power went unchecked. I have become something of a neighborhood folk hero, which is both flattering and embarrassing. People call me the guy who stood up to the HOA, and while that is technically true, I do not think of myself that way. I was just a guy who wanted to be left alone with his boat. But I understand why the story resonates with people. Everyone has dealt with some petty authority figure who made their life difficult. Everyone has wanted to fight back but felt powerless to do so. My story showed that you can fight back, and sometimes you can win. The legal system worked the way it was supposed to. The police took my complaint seriously. The prosecutor built a strong case. The jury saw through Brenda's excuses. The judge handed down an appropriate sentence. It was not perfect, but it was justice, and justice matters. It matters that people cannot just break into your property and take your stuff because they think their position gives them that right. It matters that the law applies equally to everyone. It matters that actions have consequences. Brenda learned that the hard way, and I hope it was a lesson that stuck. As for me, I am just happy to be living my life again without drama. I go to work, come home, take care of my house, and go fishing on weekends. It is a simple life, but it is mine, and nobody gets to take that away from me. The boat motor is still running strong. I had it serviced again last month, and the mechanic said it is in excellent condition. I plan to keep using it for many years to come, a testament to why I fought so hard to protect it. Every time I fire up that motor and head out onto the water, I feel a sense of satisfaction. I protected what was mine. I stood up to a bully. I helped make my community better, and I came out the other side stronger and more confident than before. That is worth more than any boat motor.